Hello and welcome to another Wolftime gaming video. Today I'm going to be painting this Impulsor for my Space Wolf successor chapter, the Red Wolves. As you can see, I've added a little bit of green stuff and a couple of little wolf heads I've got from Spellcrow, just to give it that little bit of individuality and make it different from the standard Impulsor. Before we get started on the painting though, as usual, let's get that kettle on. So one of the first steps in painting any of the vehicles is to give it a really good base coat. I've stuck with the grey theme of my force, and I've gone with the Mechanicus standard grey as a base coat, covering the whole vehicle and all the little bits of weapons that you can see there. I've actually already painted up the base, as you can see here. It's a really easy paint scheme if you want to follow it. It's essentially just Rhino I as a base, straight over the top of a black. With a little bit of Mournfang brown just to highlight some of the raised areas of the soil, and then I've used Mechanicus standard grey, Dawnstone and Celestra grey and the rocks to really make them pop. The snow that you can see there is the Valhalla Blizzard you can get from Games Workshop. So on to painting the actual vehicle itself. The first step, as I've done with the actual troops themselves, is to give it a really good dry brush of Dawnstone. Done this across the whole model, all the bits and pieces that are definitely going to stay grey. So I've ignored the seats in the back, for example, and I've also ignored all the railings, like the metal parts, essentially, that I'm going to go silver. So we'll skip ahead past the dry brushing stage, and now we're on to the actual shading, and that's across the whole model, and it's just Agrax Earthshade, complete coating across all the armour where we've just dry brushed. And what this does is add in all the shaded areas into the recesses and looks really quite cool, as you can see here. So it almost looks a little bit dirty as well. I've then gone on to painting the red areas of the model, namely the wolf heads on either side of the vehicle, and there's like a straight area across the front of the vehicle as well, and the glasses plate area. And I've done that with a contrast paint, and the contrast paint I've used in this instance is Blood Angels Red. It's a really good paint to go with. It's nice and easy, you go straight onto the model, sinks into all those recessed areas, so you don't need to highlight it if you don't want to. I, however, am going to highlight this with another red paint, which is Mephiston Red, just to really bring out some of the raised details that you can see there. And I'm also going to dry brush all the areas across the glasses plate, just to really bring out some of the red and make it look really effective. You can see straight away, just on the bottom area there where it's already gone on, the Mephiston Red starts to look really effective and almost blends into that darker areas at the edge of the panel. It really adds a little bit of depth to it. I then moved on to the brown areas of the model, and again we're going to be using a contrast paint, and that's the contrast wildwood in this instance. And I'm covering the whole of this back area, essentially where they stand. I wanted it to stand out a little bit. I didn't want it to just mould into the rest of the model by keeping it grey, so I thought, why not go with a brown? At the same time, I've also done all the furs, and with this contrast wildwood, it's a really good paint to do this. Drops into the recesses really nicely and looks really effective as well. I've done all the furs in this instance, but you can actually go with other types of furs and other colours if you wanted to. The underside of the furs, which is folded over on the front one here, is painted with Xandri Dust and then covered with a little bit of Agrax Earthshade, which you'll see in a little while, but essentially the base coat is Xandri Dust on this, and it looks really effective, and it really stands out quite nicely from the contrast wildwood as well, so you get a really nice effect from it. I did try using another contrast paint for this, namely Skeleton Horde, but it doesn't really work with the grey base coat, so you do really want something with a higher pigment than the contrast paint, essentially, to get that colour. Then moved on to all the gold areas, some of the little details around the model, which is the skulls, and I've done that with the Retributor armour, as I've done with all the rest of the models as well. Back to the contrast paints, we've gone back to black this time, and this is Contrast Black Templar, and I've started with essentially the seats of the actual vehicle in the back. to make them stand out a little bit from the rest of the vehicle. I've also at this point gone on to the engines, and I'm painting, there's like a bulbous area, I'm not really sure what this is for, but essentially it's on both sides, and I've started with a black base coat on that, and I think I thought at this stage I'd leave it at this as well, because I thought it looked quite effective and stood out quite nicely. There's a few little panels just in the back as well. I've painted all those with the contrast black, and the exhaust bits at the back there you can see. Then onto a silver paint, and as usual with my silver, I've gone with Lead Belcher because it's a fantastic silver colour and looks really effective when you stick a little bit of null on there, which we'll do in a while. But to really get this looking shiny and looking nice, I've just give it a complete coating of this Lead Belcher. It's a really nice one across the rails there, and I've also done the underside of the vehicle as well. All of those sort of grav panels, I'm not really sure what you'd call them, but the bits that make it float, essentially, you can see there, I've done all the silver bits there, and it's starting to look really effective already. Now it was on to shading, as I've just mentioned. I've used a bit of null oil all over the silver areas. This does take a little while, but you just essentially cover the whole thing. There's a few silver bits in the like sort of cab area at the back as well, the passenger area. So I've covered those in the null oil as well. And what this does is drop into all the recesses and the edges of the panels and the edges of like the bits of the piping and things. So it gives it that more realistic feel. Especially with the null oil, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I'll use it whenever I use silver. I'll stick null oil onto it straight away. This is the Agrax shade now, a little bit just on the underside of any of the furs, and this little bit that's hanging over. There's also a bit on the back fur there, just on the panel as well. And you stick this on there, and it gives it again a more realistic feel rather than that just one complete block of colour, because it never quite works if you try and leave it like that. You always want to have something else there, a little bit of interest going on with the colouring. He's then on to a few of the smaller details, and namely it was the actual lights themselves. Now this does take a little bit of time and a little bit of patience to try and get this looking good, and I've gone with the Sotec green to start with, and you can see I've actually broken my Insane Detail brush by accident, but I didn't want to waste it, so I'm using it anyway, just doing it really up close. And all you need to do is touch the Sotec green just on all of the lights or anything that you really want to shine nicely. And then the second stage in that is go with a Temple Guard blue or something very similar. They do exactly the same technique, but instead of covering the whole of that light, just touch the center, because what this does is make it look like it's shining and look like the light's actually turned on, rather than it being that block of color. Exactly the same way we were talking about with the shading, but this time we're highlighting the centers. It really does work and really does make it look effective. I've also done some of the buttons and things on the panels in like the passenger area with exactly the same technique, and it really makes it shine up nicely. And then a little bit of edge highlighting just across the whole model now. I'll show you with the actual weapons themselves. And I've just picked out Administratum Grey, which is like sort of a lighter grey than the Dawnstone that we've gone with the base. So it shows up quite nicely, but it's not as bright as like a white, because I didn't want to go that sort of bright really. And all you do is just get a little bit of paint on the brush, and just essentially just paint using the edge of the brush, the actual body of the brush, rather than the point. Then I wanted to add in a little bit of detailing just to make it look a little bit grimy, and we've gone with one of the technical paints, which is Typhus Corrosion. You can see here what I've done is just touched it on the rivets and then essentially drawing a little bit of streaking just across the model. And what you want to do is start thick, go thin, which does sound obvious, but some people end up doing one big thick like line, and it doesn't really look great. But there you have it, that's the model complete. You can see the streaking looking really effective, mixed in with that Agrax shade across the whole model, makes it look really dirty and grimy. But I haven't done any sort of battle damage, so it's sort of still quite new. So I think it's looking really, really good, and it really complements the rest of my force well. The red pops really nicely. I would have maybe wished I'd done a different colour fur as well, so they weren't all brown, but I might do that on the next model. But thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it helps you in your painting journey as well. Make sure you do hit that subscribe button. Go and check out the other videos we've got on the channel as well. But thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.